We are glad to welcome you to the Lucas History Channel. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more stories like this. Enjoy your viewing. The old wooden house loomed at the end of the driveway, its worn shutters and peeling paint betraying decades of neglect. I hesitated before stepping out of the car, the engine's idle hum a thin tether to the normalcy I was about to leave behind. Inside that house, answers waited, or maybe only more pain. It started with a letter, one I almost threw away. The envelope was plain, the handwriting unfamiliar. My wife, Emma, had brought it in with the other mail, tossing it on the counter without a second glance. "Looks like junk," she'd said before heading upstairs to check on our son. But something about it caught my eye. There was no return address, and the paper had been folded several times, as if it had traveled a long way to get to me. Dear Daniel. You don't know me, but I know you. There's something you need to see. Come to 317, Cypress Lane, tonight at 8 p.m. I promise, it's about Emma. Emma. My wife of 5 years. My partner in everything, or so I thought. I read the letter 3 times before shoving it into my pocket. Was it a prank? A scam? The only thing I knew for sure was that whoever wrote it knew enough to make me show up. The front door creaked ominously as I pushed it open, stepping into a dimly lit hallway. The scent of mildew clung to the air, mingling with the faint aroma of cigarette smoke. At the far end of the hall, a single lamp cast its weak glow over a table. A man sat behind it, his face half obscured by shadow. "Daniel," he said, his voice rough like gravel. "I didn't think you'd come." "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice steadier than I felt. "What do you know about Emma?" The man leaned forward, revealing a gaunt face with hollow eyes that seemed to drink in the light. "The better question is, what don't you know?" He slid a manila folder across the table. "Open it." With trembling hands, I lifted the cover and stared at the contents. Photographs, grainy, hastily taken, but unmistakable. Emma, arm in arm with an older man. Their faces were close, too close. Another photo showed them leaving a hotel together, his hand resting possessively on her back. I felt the room tilt. Who is he?" The man gave a bitter laugh. "Isn't it obvious? That's your father." For a moment, the words didn't register. My father. My father. The man who taught me how to tie my shoes, drive a car, and stand tall in the face of adversity. It couldn't be. The man across the table must have seen the disbelief etched into my face. "I know it's hard to believe," he said, lighting a cigarette with a steady hand. "But denial won't change the truth." I slammed the folder shut and pushed it back toward him. "Why should I trust you? Who the hell are you, and why do you even care about my marriage?" He leaned back, exhaling a plume of smoke that seemed to linger in the stale air like a ghost. "Call it a public service. Your father and we've got history. Let's just say this isn't the first time he's crossed a line." I didn't want to give his words weight, but the photographs felt like anchors, pulling me into a dark ocean I couldn't escape. My mind raced, replaying moments I hadn't questioned before. The way Emma smiled when Dad visited, the little jokes they shared that seemed to exclude me, the times she insisted I give them space to talk about some vague family matter. Was I blind, or just naive? "Why tonight?" I asked finally, my voice hollow. "Why tell me now?" The man stubbed out his cigarette. "Because he's got her convinced. She's leaving you, Daniel. If you don't believe me, check her phone. The messages are all there." My stomach churned. I didn't want to believe him, but I couldn't ignore the growing storm of doubt. Without another word, I turned and stormed out of the house, his raspy voice following me into the night. "You'll see I'm right soon enough." When I got home, the house was dark except for the faint glow of the TV in the living room. Emma was curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I walked in, her expression unreadable. "You're late," she said, setting her phone aside. "Everything okay?" I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the folder's images haunted me, urging caution. "Yeah," I lied. "Just got caught up with something." Emma tilted her head, studying me. "You look upset. What's going on?" Her concern felt like a slap. I forced a smile. "Just tired. I'm going to bed." But as I climbed the stairs, I couldn't stop glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see my father's face in the shadows. Once in the bedroom, I opened her nightstand drawer, my heart pounding like a drum. Her phone sat there, charging. The screen lit up as I pressed the power button, and the notification banner sent my world spinning. A message from Dad, tomorrow at noon. Same place. I felt the walls close in. There was no mistaking it now. This wasn't just a nightmare, it was real. The phone trembled in my hands as I stared at the message. Tomorrow at noon. Same place. A dozen questions collided in my mind. What place? How long had this been going on? Did they think I was a fool, too blind to see what was right in front of me? The house was eerily quiet, the only sound the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. My thoughts raced as I returned the phone to the nightstand, careful not to disturb its position. I couldn't confront Emma, not yet. If she denied it, I'd have no proof. If I accused her, I'd risk tipping them off before I knew the full truth. No, I needed more. The next morning, I woke early, feigning sleep when Emma stirred beside me. She slipped out of bed and headed for the shower, humming softly to herself. The sound grated on my nerves. How could she seem so normal? As soon as the water started running, I grabbed her phone again, scrolling through her messages. My breath caught when I found the thread with my father. It was worse than I had imagined. "Dad, yesterday was incredible. You've brought so much light into my life." "Emma, same here. I can't believe how easy this feels. It's like we were meant to find each other." "Dad, Daniel doesn't suspect a thing, does he?" "Emma, no. He's so trusting. It makes me feel guilty sometimes, but I know this is right." My stomach turned. The betrayal was laid bare, as if they had written it just to mock me. A sick part of me almost admired their audacity. Emma's footsteps approached, and I quickly locked the phone, sliding it back into place. When she entered the room, wrapped in a towel, her damp hair clinging to her shoulders, I forced myself to meet her eyes. "You're up early," she said with a smile. "Want me to make you some coffee?" The offer twisted like a knife. "No, I'm fine," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Actually, I was thinking of running some errands today." She nodded, oblivious. "Sounds good. I've got plans with a friend this afternoon, so it works out." I didn't need to ask which friend she meant. At 11:45 a.m., I parked down the street from the address I'd pulled from their messages, a boutique hotel on the edge of town. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I watched the entrance. At exactly noon, Emma arrived, her hair tied up in a neat bun, wearing the red dress I'd bought her for our last anniversary. She walked inside without hesitation. 5 minutes later, another car pulled up. My father stepped out, looking as polished as ever in his pressed slacks and tailored blazer. He glanced around, his sharp eyes scanning for any sign of trouble, before disappearing through the same door. My heart pounded in my chest as I climbed out of the car. I couldn't sit idly by any longer. Inside, the lobby was quiet, the receptionist engrossed in her computer screen. I slipped past unnoticed, following the sound of hushed voices to a private room. The door was ajar, and through the crack, I saw them, Emma and my father, standing close, their hands entwined. "I can't keep lying to him," Emma said, her voice trembling. "He doesn't need to know," my father replied, his tone calm and assured. "Daniel will be fine. This is about us now. The sight of them together, so intimate, sent a surge of fury through me. I stepped into the doorway, and their heads snapped toward me, faces frozen in shock. "Daniel," Emma gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. My father's expression shifted, his usual composure slipping just enough for me to see the guilt beneath. "Son, I can explain." "No," I cut him off, my voice cold and steady. "You don't get to explain. Not this." I stepped into the room, shutting the door behind me with deliberate finality. The soft click echoed like a gunshot. They stood frozen, side by side, their shared guilt staining the air between us. For a moment, I said nothing, letting the silence tighten its grip. "Daniel," Emma began, her voice shaking, "this isn't what it looks like." I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound that filled the space. "No. Because it looks like my wife and my father are sneaking around behind my back. What am I missing?" My father raised a hand, his voice calm, almost patronizing. "Son, take a breath. Let's sit down and discuss this." "Don't," I said sharply, my anger cutting through his words like a blade. "You don't get to talk to me like that. Not now. Not ever again." Emma stepped forward, her eyes pleading. "Daniel, please, I can explain." I held up a hand, stopping her in her tracks. "Explain what?" "That you've been lying to me. That every moment we've shared, the vows, the years, our child, meant so little to you that you'd throw it away for him." Her lips quivered, but no words came. My father, ever the master of composure, stepped into the void she left behind. "Daniel, this was never meant to hurt you. Emma and I, we didn't plan this. It just happened." I turned to him, my fists clenched at my sides. "It just happened. That's the best you can come up with? You're my father. You're supposed to protect me, to set an example. And you," I pointed at Emma, my voice cracking. "You're the one person I trusted more than anyone else in the world." Tears streamed down Emma's face, but they only fueled my rage. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered. "I love you, Daniel. I do. But your father, he made me feel alive again." "Alive?" The word tasted bitter in my mouth. "You mean he fed your ego while betraying everything we built together?" She sobbed, her shoulders shaking, but I felt no sympathy. My father took a step toward me, his hand outstretched. "You have every right to be angry. But don't let this destroy you. Let's talk about how to move forward." I stepped back, glaring at him. "Move forward? With what? The two of you playing house while I pretend this never happened?" His jaw tightened. "It doesn't have to be like that. We can find a way to keep this civilized." That word, civilized, ignited something in me. I laughed again, a sound tinged with disbelief and fury. "You're unbelievable. You betray your own son, and now you want to dictate how I handle it." The weight of their betrayal pressed against my chest, threatening to suffocate me. I needed to act, to reclaim some semblance of control. My voice steadied, cold and precise. "This is what's going to happen," I said, looking between them. "You, Dad, will leave this town. You'll walk out of this room, pack your things, and disappear. If I see you again, if I even hear about you reaching out to Emma, I will destroy everything you've built, your reputation, your life. Don't test me. And you," I turned to Emma, my voice like ice, "will come home and tell our son that you've made a mistake. You'll act like the perfect mother until I figure out the best way to end this sham of a marriage without destroying his childhood." Her sobs grew louder. "Daniel, please, don't do this. I can make this right." "You can't," I interrupted. "You've already chosen. You and my father made that decision when you crossed this line. Now you'll live with the consequences." They stared at me, the weight of my ultimatum sinking in. I turned on my heel and walked out, the sound of Emma's crying and my father's strained voice fading behind me. I filed for divorce the next morning, citing irreconcilable differences. Emma didn't contest it. She stayed in town, trying to salvage some semblance of a relationship with our son, though I kept her at arm's length. My father left as I demanded, his absence a quiet acknowledgement of his guilt. For months, I wrestled with the pain, the betrayal, and the hollow spaces where trust used to live. But in the end, I chose to focus on my son, building a life for the two of us. I'd been dealt a cruel hand, but I refused to let their betrayal define me. Some scars fade, while others remain. But life, I learned, moves on. And so did I. Months passed, and the routine of single parenthood became my new normal. Ethan, my son, was my anchor. His laughter lit up the house, chasing away shadows I couldn't face alone. Emma stayed in the periphery, our interactions reduced to polite exchanges during custody handovers. As for my father, he had vanished completely, as I'd demanded. But peace is a fragile thing, easily shattered. It began one evening when I came home to find an unmarked envelope sitting on my porch. The handwriting was familiar, sharp and angular, a ghost from the night my life crumbled. I tore it open with a mix of dread and curiosity. Daniel. You may think you've escaped this, but the truth has a way of resurfacing. You should know your father didn't leave town entirely. He's been watching, waiting. And Emma? She's not as distant from him as you believe. Meet me at the diner on 3rd Street tomorrow at 9 p.m. There's more you need to know. A friend. The message sent a chill down my spine. I wanted to crumple the letter and ignore it, but the seeds of doubt had already been planted. What if it was true? What if the nightmare I thought I'd escaped was still lurking, ready to swallow me whole? The diner was nearly empty when I arrived the next night, the smell of frying bacon and stale coffee hanging in the air. In a corner booth sat the same gaunt man who had first revealed the betrayal. His hollow eyes met mine as he gestured for me to sit. I told you it wasn't over, he said without preamble. Get to the point, I snapped, my patience already thin. He slid a phone across the table. On the screen was a photo of Emma and my father, seated in a dimly lit restaurant, their faces close, their expressions intimate. The timestamp was from 2 nights ago. They've been meeting in secret, he said. Not often, but enough. My chest tightened. Why are you telling me this? What do you get out of it? Because I know what your father's capable of, he replied, his voice low. And I know he won't stop until he gets what he wants. I clenched my fists under the table. What does he want? The man leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. You out of the way. The drive home was a blur, the man's warning echoing in my mind. Could it be true? Was my father scheming to take my place, to erase me from the life I had left? When I arrived, the house was dark, save for a faint glow in the living room. I pushed the door open and froze. My father was sitting on the couch, his posture relaxed, as if he belonged there. What the hell are you doing here? I demanded, stepping inside. He stood slowly, his eyes unreadable. We need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, I said, my voice rising. You lost that right when you betrayed me. I know you're angry, he said, his tone infuriatingly calm. But you need to understand, I did what I did because Emma came to me. She wasn't happy with you, Daniel. She needed something you couldn't give her. The word struck like a blow, but I refused to let him see it. Get out, I said through clenched teeth. Before I make you. He smirked, a flicker of the arrogance I had once admired but now despised. I'm not leaving. This is my family too. You're delusional, I spat. You think you can just walk back into our lives after what you've done? I don't think, he said, stepping closer. I know. The room felt suffocating as my father stepped closer, his presence imposing and unwelcome. Every muscle in my body tensed, ready to spring, but I forced myself to stay still. I couldn't let him bait me into something reckless. Not yet. I don't know what game you think you're playing, I said, my voice low and steady, but it ends now. You've taken enough. He crossed his arms, smirking. Taken? No, Daniel. I've given. I gave you life, a home, everything you ever needed. And you? You squandered it. You couldn't even keep your own wife satisfied. The words cut deep, but I refused to let them show. You think this is about Emma? I said, stepping closer. This is about you. You've spent your life taking what you want, consequences be damned. But not this time. His smirk faded, replaced by a colder, harder expression. You think you can stop me? You don't have the spine, Daniel. You never did. That's why she came to me. Something inside me snapped. Get out of my house, I growled, my voice trembling with barely restrained fury. He took another step forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. Or what? You'll hit me? Call the cops. Face it, Daniel, you're a child pretending to be a man. You don't have the guts to fight for what's yours. For a heartbeat, the room was silent, the tension crackling like a live wire. Then, without thinking, I swung. My fist connected with his jaw, sending him stumbling back into the coffee table, which splintered under his weight. He groaned, clutching his face, but the look he shot me wasn't one of pain, it was satisfaction. There it is, he said, laughing hoarsely. Finally, a little fire. The sound of footsteps broke the moment. Emma appeared in the hallway, her face pale as she took in the scene. What's going on? She demanded, her voice shaky. Ask him, I said, pointing to my father. Ask him why he's here, why he's still trying to destroy what little I have left. Emma looked between us, her confusion giving way to something darker, guilt. I didn't ask him to come, she said quietly. I told him to leave us alone. My father chuckled, wiping a trickle of blood from his lip. That's not how I remember it. Shut up, she snapped, her voice rising. You're the one who wouldn't let go. I told you it was over, that it was a mistake, but you wouldn't listen. Her admission hit me like a second blow. You've been meeting him, I said, my voice hollow. Even after everything. She turned to me, tears streaming down her face. I was trying to end it. I didn't want this anymore, Daniel. I swear. Enough lies, I said, stepping back. Both of you. Emma reached for me, but I pulled away. I've spent months trying to put the pieces of my life back together, for Ethan's sake. And now I see the truth, neither of you deserves to be part of it. Daniel, please, she begged, her voice breaking. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I shook my head, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me like a boulder. You can't fix this, Emma. You can't undo what you've done. Turning to my father, I locked eyes with him one last time. And you, stay out of my life. If I see you near my family again, I won't stop at a punch. He stared back, his smirk finally gone, replaced by something I hadn't seen before, fear. That night, I packed a bag for Ethan and me. We left the house, leaving Emma and the ghosts of what could have been behind. I filed for sole custody the next day, using every shred of evidence I had against her and my father. The process was grueling, but in the end, the courts ruled in my favor. Emma moved out of town shortly after, her pleas for forgiveness unanswered. My father disappeared again, this time for good. I didn't care where he went. I only cared that he stayed gone. For the first time in months, the air felt lighter. The wounds they left would take time to heal, but I had something they couldn't touch anymore, my son, my dignity, and the chance to rebuild a life free of their shadows. And this time, I'd guard it with everything I had. The months following the custody ruling were quiet. Ethan and I settled into a new routine, far removed from the chaos of betrayal. I moved us to a small house on the edge of town, surrounded by tall oaks and the soothing sound of wine through the leaves. Life wasn't perfect, it rarely is, but it was ours, and for the first time in a long time, I felt in control. Emma had tried to contact me a few times, her emails and letters pleading for another chance. I didn't reply. There were no words that could undo what she had done. As for my father, he stayed true to his word, or maybe he finally understood that crossing me again would have consequences he wasn't prepared to face. I thought the storm had passed. I was wrong. It was a cold November evening when I found the envelope on my doorstep. This one wasn't handwritten or mysterious, it bore the official seal of the court. Inside was a notice: Emma was filing for shared custody. My stomach sank as I read the attached letter from her lawyer. She claimed she had turned her life around, was attending therapy, and had found stable work in a nearby city. She wanted to be part of Ethan's life again. The thought of sharing my son, of exposing him to the fractured mess she had become, filled me with dread. I reached for my phone, dialing my attorney. "We'll fight it," he assured me. "But you should be prepared. The courts favor reconciliation when possible, especially with parents." The thought made my blood boil. After everything she had done, they wanted to give her a chance to undo the damage. But I refused to let her back into our lives without a fight. The court date arrived too soon. I stood before the judge, my heart pounding as Emma testified about her journey of redemption. She spoke of regret, of healing, of wanting to rebuild her bond with Ethan. Her words were polished, rehearsed, but there was an earnestness in her tone that made me uneasy. When my turn came, I laid everything bare: the infidelity, the lies, the neglect. I presented the photographs, the messages, the evidence of her betrayal. My voice trembled as I described the pain Ethan and I endured, but I didn't let it falter. My son deserves stability, I concluded. He deserves a parent who puts his needs first, not one who chases selfish desires at the expense of her family. The courtroom was silent as the judge reviewed the evidence. Emma avoided my gaze, her hands trembling as she clutched the edge of the table. My father wasn't there, thankfully, but his shadow loomed over the proceedings like a specter. After what felt like an eternity, the judge spoke. "Given the evidence presented and the impact on the child's well-being, I am inclined to award Mr. Johnson full custody. However, Mrs. Johnson will be granted supervised visitation, contingent upon continued therapy and demonstrated improvement in her stability." Relief flooded through me. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was enough. After the hearing, Emma approached me in the hallway, her eyes red and swollen. "Daniel, please. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to understand. I was lost. I made terrible choices, but I never stopped loving you or Ethan." I met her gaze, searching for any trace of the woman I once loved. "Emma, love isn't enough. Not anymore. I'll do what's best for Ethan, but you and we're finished. For good." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she nodded, accepting the finality of my words. That night, as I tucked Ethan into bed, he looked up at me with sleepy eyes. "Dad, is Mom coming back?" I paused, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "She might visit sometimes, buddy. But you and we're a team now. We're going to be okay." He smiled, his trust in me shining through. "I like our team." So did I. As I sat by the window later that night, watching the moonlight filter through the trees, I felt the weight of the past finally lifting. The pain, the betrayal, the anger, they were still there, but they no longer defined me. I had my son, my peace, and a life worth rebuilding. And that was enough. The end. Thank you for watching to the end. Write in the comments what you liked and what you would like to see next.